Hello, everybody. Welcome to Future Hackers' very first event, Quantum Thinking. I'm Maria Taide, Future Hackers International host and partner.
Hello everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm André Chaves, the co-founder and Brazilian host for this initiative that suddenly changed our lives.
We began as an interview podcast 1 year ago, which turned out to be the best jobs we could ever have. We've been talking to amazing people all over the world, learning about all sorts of topics, which are actually shaping our possible futures.
Before we noticed, organically, we started being heard in more than 75 countries around the world. I'd like to thank for all the guests all over the world that have been the partner and evangelist of our project. We are planning many other initiatives during this year.
We'd like to thank all our listeners that have been following us and helping to spread the word. We have a very exciting event today, and we hope it's the first of many to come.
We will keep searching for brilliant experts all over the world to come to share their thoughts, knowledge, and perspective about our future they're helping to design.
Our goal is to inspire people to be actors of change, to discuss topics that are critical for our future, to make sure we're heading towards a more inclusive, sustainable society using technology innovation to promote good.
It's on you. It's on all and each one of us.
If you have any questions to ask our guests during the event, feel free to write them on our chat. We'll take note and we'll do our best to answer during the day. If there's no time, we'll make sure to address afterwards, as the recording of the event will be available to you.
We hope you enjoy our event as much we enjoyed organizing it. This is our agenda for the day, and we will be back in a couple of minutes to introduce on the first guests.
So let's begin. Our very first guest is Itai Talmi, a futurist from Israel. Itai is helping leaders benefit from applied human-centered futures to discover and create scenarios worth aspiring for. He's been designing and choreographing strategic futures R&D and transformative innovation initiatives for over 20 years. He founded Born Partners, and he's the founding participant and ambassador of Think School of Creative Leadership. Welcome, Itai.
Let's start from the beginning. My name is Itai Talmi. I'm talking to you now from Tel Aviv, from a co-space in the middle of this rumbling city. It's evening time, and we're going to jump into kind of an odd gonzo-style journey into all kinds of futures that I see happening now in the world. And I will take you into a journey through my eyes. It's not it's called the Gonzo journey because it's not objective, okay? It's subjective. It's the way I see the future, and there are no future. There is no singular future. There are futures. And you can see the world we live in from many, many angles. And you can put the spot on specific angles. But my kind of futures that I research and work for is the human future, is the humanity as a whole, the planet, everything that is living on this planet, and maybe other planets, but I'm still focusing on researching this planet. There's lots of work to do. So let's begin without no shorter notice, because it's kind of a long journey in quite a constrained time. So I will go quite quick and quite emotionally and I will quite push the slides into you, because there's a lot I want to talk about. So first, let me introduce myself for a second, because it's not a common profession, I know. So I'm starting moving. My firm is called Born Partners. My partners are all kinds of collaborators from all around the world, and I have partners in Israel, and each project specific to its context, we're taking specific people to work with us, which are becoming our partners. It can be philosophers, it can be science fiction writers, it can be production designers, it can be digital experts, it can be scientific experts, it can be philosophers. It depends on what the project is about. But it's all around humanity and the human being. A classical table might look like that. It might look digitally, but it's like that. This is our triangle. It's called the future triangle. It's a very classic tool, one of the first tools used in futuring work. By the way, I have to understand, I do not forecast anything. I do extrapolations, I do speculations. And for that, this profession is so important. What we work in this kind of future triangle, where we're looking at a potentiality field for many, many streams of future, because there is no one future. There are plurals. The future is a bunch of stories. It's a bundle of happenings. It's a bundle of performance. It's a bundle of sensorial happenings, of smells, of things we don't even know. Things we know that will happen. For example, first thing tomorrow morning, I will drink coffee, for example. I can tell that it's going to happen. If anything crazy will stop me from drinking my coffee. But this is also a future that I know. We work in many, in the future world, there's many aspects. Some people do the research, and some people are on the other side, which continue it into prototyping, into creating actual futures based on the research, the scenarios, the thoughts, the provocations. My team's side is the actual prototyping, is the creation of futures. This is why it's combined with a discipline in design, which is called speculative design, or critical design, or fiction design, or futures design. But it's based on speculative design, which we speculate a future, and we prototype a future, or many futures, until we find the one we desire to go deep into and actually create it. So for that, we have many tools and many kind of calculations, but it's based on science. And then it comes into what we call I call strategic imagination, which is not just dreaming stories that have no hands in the context. So because we're doing it for people. It can be for a city, for a bank, for a country, for a retail outlet, for a dream of an entrepreneur that want to create the future of living for millennials that want to live in Texas in a very futuristic neighborhood. We did it as well. So it can be but it's all for humanity. The most important thing, what I like the most about my work, is what we call world building. Building a world, creating a microcosmos which contains this world within our world. And this world is a complete world with all its aspects, and we're creating it in many ways. This is just a model that shows, that kind of describes what goes into a world. And for example, some of the uses of that can be in movies, because creating a future is a bit like creating a movie, except that instead of movie, it can be a neighborhood. It can be a new cluster. It can be a new neighborhood. It can be a new medical device. It can be a new medical neighborhood. It can be a new university, okay? but it's the same kind of iteration. It's the same process, because the man who invented it, his name is Alex McDowell, and he actually is the one. That's what's cool about him. He's like the one who created Fight Club and Minority Report and Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, as you can see, and many other movies, maybe famous movies. And he did it out of his mind. He created a world in which they injected a movie. For example, in the movie Minority Report, it didn't start with a script. It started by Spielberg getting into a ranch months before the movie began even being written. All the a group of top scientists from all over the world, and they started to create. I mean, Spielberg gave them some kind of a narrative, and they started creating a wannabe world, some kind of a world, some kind of a sequence of living, and they created all the machines, and as we see in Minority Report, the police and all the movements of the future and behaviors and such. When they finished creating everything with all these scientists that they invented, on top of that, they created a script. And on top of that, they was creating a movie. But we could have taken the result of that work in that ranch with Spielberg and all the scientists and created a new, I don't know, a lab, a university, an innovation center or something. It had the same materials, okay? So this guy, Alex McDowell, said, okay, it can be used outside of movies, so let's do it. So I got in love with this system. So what I do is I do the research like a lot of futurists, but then what I present, what my agency does is world building. We actually want to bring it to reality. What we designed for is not the 6 senses, because there are 33 senses. We only know and talk about 6 senses, but we have so many senses to deal with when we approach creating a world or even investigating a simple human-centered problem when designing for a human being in a flat or at work, whatever. There are 33 senses that we have to take into account. So this is the more or less, I don't have a lot of time, so this is what I'll talk about myself. You can read a lot more about in my website. Let's move into the actual story of the presentation, which is the story of our world and the way I see it. So I'm going to take you now, we're going to start the journey now, the journey into the edge of today and the beginning of tomorrow or many tomorrows. And I will show you now all kinds of a topographic, socialistic, geographic, scientific kind of map of a vision or many cameras into the society that we're living now as we see it. It's like a big playground. So I see a lot of things that I might bring angles that you know, I might bring angles that that will give you a bit of thinking of what kind of a world we're going into now. So let's start. We have kind of 4 kind of windows or 4 kinds of thinking when we think of things that are around us or things that can become. What we do in our daily is what we call pink flamingos. It's the known knowns. It's what I know that I know. This is more or less everything and mostly what I do. Some people are don't going out of it because they're afraid. Some people are doing research or working towards a solution. It's something they do. So they're going into the unknown knowns, things that we don't know, but other people know. So we are going into it, and we might make a research out of it, and might deal with it at work, all kinds of occasional problems, things that we know that we don't know. that we will feel through to our work, to our life, to conversation between human beings. And there are things that me
Recording stopped.
love the most, which is the unknown unknown. What we don't know that we don't know. What is kind of other sides of the brain, and we just don't have the tools to think about them. This is where we live. This is where things happen until they're being brought into reality. So let us jump into the world now. In a very simple terms, the world now, it's a very unique kind of era, very unique period that we're living now on this planet. The planet now is between stories, the yesterday and the tomorrow. This is the today, and because of all the happenings that been around in the last 10, 20 years, and the pace of progressivity that entered the game on the other side, it kind of puts us between stories. The story of the tomorrow that we can sniff, we can see, we can touch, we can enjoy a little bit, maybe some of the privileged ones, and we can see what is need to be gone from the yesterday. For example, we saw the end, this caricature, or not caricature, it's quite kind of sad, was at the end of the Donald Trump days. But we're still living in such a world because there's so many people that are ruling countries that are behaving like him and even worse. So the kind of operational modules that have been running the world for so many centuries and brought us colonialism and brought us all kinds of economic models that doesn't benefit the underprivileged and the hidden people, the transparent people are still with us. We still carry that as history. But we can see a new world. We can see new movements. We can see new startups that are bringing new models, new economic models, new food growing models, new medical models, new sharing models, the sharing economy, all kinds of new economies and new initiatives that are doing good and bringing an equal playing field to everybody. But they're still kind of not rare, but they're still not taking over completely. So now this era is called transitional times. There are stories being written in languages, in slang, in a pattern that we don't want to speak anymore, and the young audience dislike them, the generation Z and the millennials, but the old ones still carrying them, everything to do with tradition and things we don't really understand, but we still keep doing them. So the world is kind of a chaos point. It's being, it's trying to move and take the shell of itself and evolve like a cocoon, like a chrysalis into its new becoming, but it has forces that stop him. So it's like a big madhouse now. And in madhouse, we know that who are the mad ones and who are not. So we're trying to jam in the normality field and shake it up with all kinds of, we can see it in demonstration, we can see it in innovation, we can see it in many, many things, and to kind of adapt to this asynchronic reality. It's a crazy reality. It's very hard to say, because the people from the past, the people that has a different kind of view on humanity, the kind of view that doesn't contain the other, but that exploits the other, they're winning this market. This is the biggest market ever, in every market, in everything that can be a market. Believing and trusting, this is it. If you can get somebody to believe in you, in believing what you say, even if it's not true, even if you cooked it in a consciousness engineering lab, if you got somebody to believe, then it is your client for everything you do. You can send him even to kill someone. And we saw it in Israel in '95. We lost a prime minister. I will move on. I will a little bit talk about now the world that we used to live until now, which is a sugar-coated, branded, domesticated society that being taught all kinds of, believe all kinds of dogmas, that the truth is something that is living with us for thousands of years. This is how you do it. My grandmother did it. My grandfather did it. It's been running in our family as a tradition. We cannot bring tradition. You don't really understand that kind of transition. Every transition has evolution. Everything needs to evolve. Otherwise, it got stuck. You know, standing water brings only mosquitoes. So it's kind of manufactured normalcy. It's not really normality. It's being cooked by the industry for the industrial revolution. They want us in specific molds. They want us to work 9 to 5, not together in unions, not to be too independent. The top economy leaders don't really like unions or getting together or entrepreneurship unless they can control it. And this is what we see. We see consolidations. We see buyouts. You see a lot of entrepreneurs are being bought by big companies, and they're happy about it because now they are rich. But they're being bought. They're being swallowed into the same dump. What's the point of it? So it's again, they're sugar-coated. I don't like it personally. I'm telling you, I'm going to put a lot of personal opinions in this journey because it's a gonzo journey. It's not a scientific exploration in the economy now. This world which we live in has a name. It's called the VUCA world. Maybe many of you already know the name, the acronym VUCA, because it's quite famous. It got into the HR department in many companies, and a lot of businessmen are saying VUCA, VUCA, and trying to adapt to it and trying to do something, what we do with it, how we approach it, how do we train leadership with it, how do we train our employee with it, which employee actually get it, probably the young ones, what are the attitude towards it. So VUCA is actually came from the American Army when they were working in Vietnam, fighting in Vietnam, and they like acronyms in the Pentagon. So, but they couldn't decipher this chaotic way that the other army is fighting them. They have no rules. It's crazy. Wow, what do you mean? Why are you not fighting in an orderly fashion way? Because they're not an army. They're just an entity that fights you. They are not obliged. They don't have to go with any rules. So they call it VUCA. And VUCA stands for 4 elements. Volatile. For example, it means the stock market, which goes up and down with no notion ahead, just goes up and down and gets crazy and reshuffles. The exponential change, which takes things up and down and not in one pace. One day can be like that, next day can be totally different. The uncertainty, we have no idea. There's so many things that can be. It's a plurality of, or a bundle of, or an endless way of the things that can become. Complexity, everything is more complex, more hard to understand. Understanding is quite rare. Everything is multi-linked through communication, through technology. We as a body are so linked today. It's totally crazy. And the last one is ambiguous, which is, it means like a multiple meaning. Everything has multiple meaning. For example, the post-truth, I will talk about it as we go along. So it's really hard to survive in the jungle, this kind of jungle that we're seeing, that we're going into it. If we were trained in the zoo, we were being trained by lion instructors to behave in a specific way, because if we behave like that, we will have a good life and we will be good neighbors. And we don't have to know too much, because too much knowing is too heavy. Just have to be good people in a good neighborhood. And religion had that, and the American tradition had that. And it's just, you can see the whole world, most of the world is still living like that. But now, when everything is shaken, under everybody's legs, people see that they are not trained to go into this jungle. They are not trained to survive. They're not trained to respond to these kind of changes that we see. And changes is in everything. All the habits that we were, habit forming that we did is breaking. So people are kind of puzzled. So it's kind of, as we said before, we are between stories. It's an asynchronic reality. People are in chaos. So there's a lot of commotions. So it's frightening, you know. We're living in such an era that there's no one truth. You don't know who to believe. We see Russia and other countries, and Chinese and the Americans and Israelis and the Arabics are infiltrating and doing things with bots and all kinds of technological hacking systems to shake your consciousness, to shake what you perceive as truth. This is a wonderful ad by, if you remember a few years ago, by the New York Times, that they just say, listen, truth is very important, and we will do everything to protect it. So it creates an entropy. It creates a place where people are not sure, they don't have a clear way. They're starting to be afraid, and they start to take it out on other people, on things that they see as people above them or responsible for it, or actually have control in what they do in their life. So you can see it in the US, you can see it in every country now, but still mostly being quieted down. I think in the next few years we will see uprising that will not be able to be stopped down, because they will be done also digitally, technologically, and physically, and we're going to see a lot of changes. And so it brings up a lot of sensations, like disgust, like frustration. Who should I believe? Trust is at its lowest. The trust level in the world, in governments, in companies, in everything which is used to take our trust, our belief, and work with it for us, is no longer worth our trust. This is a crazy situation. This is something that we have never been like that in history. So the reaction is all kinds of uprising. We can see all kinds of alternative styles of life being entered the arena, all kinds of new kind of frugality and recycling and new styles of life and new habits. Even some of the rich people are not flaring anymore. They're not showing off, they're less showing off. Only very specific people are showing off with their wealth. But mostly you can see a bit of relaxation with this kind of bling bling attitude of the last few years of the 90s and 80s and beginning of the 2000s. We're asking for a piece of quiet, for empathy. We're asking to do things together, that because together we can do more. Mutuality, openness, transparency, relaxation, new thinking. We are more open to new thinking. In the economic arena, it's the same. You can see it very clearly. You can see that what I call capitalism, or it's not really mine, I took it from, but people are fucking pissed. The inequality is crazy. And today, with all the digital options that you can see the inequality in so many beautiful graphs in front of your eyes, it's not easy to grasp. And you can see every effort that you put in your life, and you can see what you achieved, and you can see that if you were born in a specific place, it could have been different, and not just because of hard work and labor and sweat, blood, sweat, and tears. It's not the actual formula for success, not at all. Some people are born with it historically, like kings, or some people were just in the right place at the right time. But what are they doing with their wealth in the age of empathy? This is something to think about. They don't have to give it away, but they just have to rethink how they're creating value. You can see the lifespan of companies, which is down so much. There are more companies being brought to the world every day. Much more initiatives, much more entrepreneurship, wonderful things. But their lifetime is very short. It used to be very long, not so far away. And you can see all the big ones, the old ones are collapsing because they cannot see the change. You know, Atari, Nokia, IBM, they're all kind. You know, Jack Welch said that if the rate of change on the outside exceeding the rate of change in the inside, the end is near. Again, asynchronic reality, chaos, non-equilibrium between what I hold in my world and the world outside. I'm not relevant. I'm becoming not relevant. I'm not in sync. And being in sync now is the biggest task. Because there's one thing that they have to remember, all of them. A lot of futurists, my colleagues, if I can call them colleagues, I'm a bit humble because I'm not part of any kind of clan or something, but I see a lot of them talking about technology. When you say futurist or somebody talking innovation, it's always technology, because technology is not a living thing. You don't have to have emotions toward it. You don't have to have feelings. You don't have to take care. You don't have to be afraid that you will open a union or rebel against you. It's technology. You just take the switch and it's off. So it's easier to deal with it. But it's not about that. Any innovation, any organization, any initiative, anything we do in the world has to do with only one thing, with humanity, with everything which is living. It can be animals and everything which is living on this planet with us. Everything should contain them and should take them into the equation. Otherwise, something is wrong. Tech is a supporting element. So there is no B2B or B2C or G2C or C2C. There's only age to age, human to human. That's it. Humanity moves forward. Conversations moves forward. Startup teams create via conversations, via somebody brings a word, an idea, a capsule of thoughts. The other one deciphers it. They do something together. They put it into an action. But it's always between people, through empathy, to respecting, to containing the other, that we can move forward and create and find solution to everything, not by listening to a computer. I'm moving down to another aspect of the society, which is I call the naked society, which talks about the world that we're living now, which is only at the beginning. We only see a glimpse of it now because of technology and because of everything that people create and the demands of all the big powers that are among us. And I think it's an extremely important subject, the naked society. We are naked whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. We are naked on Facebook in a way. We're naked on Instagram. We're naked on the streets. We are naked everywhere. It's a bit brutal. It can be enjoying, for example. It can bring even wealth. Instagram can bring wealth and bringing wealth to a lot of people, which is okay, until it passes some kind of edge of morality that we have to keep. But the last 30 years or 40 years is coming to an end. I call it brandalism, like vandalism or whatever, rationalism or mutualism. It's brandalism. It's been too much. They taught us that branding is about love and branding is about trust and branding is a world that we can believe. It's like religion, but it's like a mix and match religion. Today we can believe one religion of a story of a brand. Together we can believe and become a story of another brand. We can mix the brand. It's a mix and match philosophy. Wonderful. A mix and match religion. But they're owning our fantasies. We are living into their world. And wherever they navigate their story, we are being navigated to them. Sometimes we forget it. We're not awakened enough. So we need to reclaim our future. We need to open our eyes and to know that this is just commercial aesthetics that we can enjoy. And it's beautiful. Some of it are beautiful design. Some of it is a creation of beautiful, beautiful artists, okay? But let's not forget what the real meaning of it is. And let's not just do too much with it. It's only objects and they can tell stories, but let's relax. They are not humans and we cannot become like them. I'll give you an example of the last few years where it can go, which is a bit crazy with all the celebrity society and the only inventions that got mixed together into one crazy thing. This company is real. It's called Byte Labs. And what they do is very interesting and very peculiar. If you know about 23andMe, for example, or even the COVID, you're being tested for COVID. You've been taken with a thing in your nose, and they take a bit of DNA and they check it. I mean, taking DNA, checking it, and it's a common thing now. You can do with the DNA many things. You can know your ancestry. You can do a lot to know about medical, about your body, but you can take a DNA, for example, and if you heard about lab-grown meat, where people are growing meat in a lab, so they're taking, for example, a DNA of a pig or DNA. Actually, there's a big power story that moves us that we should eat lab-grown meat and not a meat that's being grown by animals that suffer, which is okay. This company took it one step forward. What they did is they're taking the DNA of a celeb, for example, Kanye West, or for example, your grandma, or your neighbor, or your news anchor, or your teacher, or every celeb that you like. It doesn't matter really. And they're growing meat from his DNA in the lab, and they're creating a sausage or a hamburger. So you can eat your grandma, or you can eat actually a Kanye West or whatever, or Trump or whatever celeb that you like, that you can get his DNA, or you can let them know that you can choose from their menu, and they send it to your house, a sausage, which was made by the DNA of Kanye West. I'm not going to order it, but I mean, I'm not judge of character or taste. So we're living in these cities and living systems, something that I deal a lot with. And we're living in a place that we are so much dealing with design, how to design our city, how to design our behaviors, our environment. But we have to remember that whatever we design, the way the streets are looking from early days, the way New York is looking, is designing us back, because our behavior is being shaped also by the look of a city. Think of any city in the world, city in the nature. When I lived in Australia, I studied in Australia, when I moved to the outback, I was behaving differently. When I moved back to Melbourne, or when I lived in the Caribbean, I behaved differently. The surrounding affects me. They're designing me back. But somebody designed that city. So this is why urban planning and thinking about how should the next 100 of years or 10 years or 50 years or 1,000 years should be, we should think about how we design our cities, how we design our living systems, and what do we need in them, what kind of behavior do we want to nurture in these places. These are the questions that I'm dealing with. We can see a lot of all kinds of new initiatives. For example, I will give you I will throw a little bit of all kinds of new initiatives that are some of them are just funny to my taste, that shows that what kind of a world that we're living in. And I will show you now. It's called Good for Your Bum, Great for the World. So whenever you wipe your ass, we will give something to another society. So we're taking a casual city living habit, and we're helping another place in the world. In any kind of a public toilets in the city, it's a real company. You put it, and you actually, in your simple little behavior, you're helping other world. Yeah, talking about the naked society. I'm continuing the naked society. Sorry that I jumped for a second. So, what I'm fascinated about the naked society, and this is an issue I will stop a little bit. In 2010, around 2010, when I moved to Amsterdam, I got interested in a group that called themselves the Quantified Self movement. If you remember back then, that was the start of the Nike watches that used to test your heart rate or how much you ran, how many steps you ran. Until today, it's being used. This is where they started to quantify us as human beings. This is at the beginning. A little bit before, there were all kinds of initiatives that did that, but this was the kind of beginning. China took it to a different level that quantified us as criminals. Policemen in China have special glasses to check if you have all kinds of criminal behavior signs. They're quantifying all kinds of levels of behavior, of sweat, of heart rate, of everything, just by watching you in a specific lens. Then there started to be all kinds of implants that people put to themselves. For example, there's a company in Sweden that I will show in a second that actually you can do it to open the fridge, or to open some kind of a machine, the vending machine, or open your office. You put a chip inside of you, and this chip can measure all kinds of things that you wanted to measure. There are also all kinds of initiatives now that are being used to check your mood, and to check your heart, and to check the level of all kinds of body parts in you. I have a friend which is developing a second skin from a very cheap kind of material that you attach to yourself. It's supposed to be for sport people, for football player, for example, and it checks 32 different elements in your body. Okay, this is all good. Okay, this is all good. This is all for the benefit of medicine and everything, which is okay. But we are being naked. We are being strapped. We are being measured all the time. And there's always the bad ones that can do bad things with it. They can use the data to make money. These companies are living on the big data they collect from us. Okay, so you signed up for that, and it's okay with you, but who actually protects your IP? Who actually is protecting your rights? Why should we start protecting our own trademark? There's a new kind of a faculty or discipline starting to grow a little bit in corners of universities that talk about a new kind of law school that deals with the human rights of bodies, the intellectual property of me. I want to protect my intellectual property, so you cannot take anything from me and use it for whatever commercial means or other espionage means or whatever you want to use them. So there's a new kind of issue in the world, which is, I'm sure, will be shown in some kind of a science fiction novel, and all kinds of startups that will deal with this issue. How do we stop body hacking from stealing our data, our blood, or anything that we carry that worth a lot of money and value to other people? For example, here you can see me in the lab of a friend which is doing experiment with the big data of brains. You can use the big data of my brain for many, many issues. I was dumb enough or happy enough to be in this experiment because it's so interesting. I trust them not to do anything bad with it because they're my friends, or do actually something good with it for humanity. And I like the picture. Looks like I'm a serial killer, I think. I don't know if I like it anymore. That's the Swedish company that actually puts a chip in your hand and you can open the fridge. Wow, what an achievement. Okay, there's so many things to measure in our body, so kinds of health sensors that can attach to our naked self that usually mostly don't have any defense on it. Some design experiment in one of the design weeks, they actually invented some kind of machine or some kind of a disc, a button that you put it in your back, and that protects from body hacking. Cerebral cybernetics. It's like the antivirus of yourself. Nice, isn't it? To show you how easy it is to do crimes or to do good, this is a British scientist from Imperial College, Heather Dewey Hagberg. What she did is she took DNA covered in sidewalks outside of bars at 2 o'clock at night, with all the drunk people are spitting and lying and whatever at the end of some kind of evening. She scrapped a lot of DNA, and at the lab, she created faces with it. It can go much, much farther than that, believe me. And we are just at the beginning of it. Just from scraping DNA from a sidewalk, we can create a human being that, or an identity that you never thought you were going to share to the world. And one day, who knows, you might take part in something, your identity is something you really didn't want to. And it was just taking when you're having a drink at the pub and you spit outside. Another phenomenon, which is all the hardship, the effort of grasping, and some people are so emotionally unregulated or sensitive that for them carrying everything they see, the open people, you can see a lot of movement because of mistrust or whatever, from FOMO, from the fear of missing out, from the crazy chase for everything that's happening, and I should take part of it, into JOMO, into the joy of missing out. You can see a lot of nature happening. A lot of people are doing things in the nature. A lot of people are doing all kinds of initiatives and startups that will take you out of the matrix, out of the system, just for a little bit, and let you think about, in the future, everybody wants to be anonymous, just to be anonymous, so nobody knows about me. Even if you connect from all your social devices, you are still not anonymous today. The right to be anonymous, the chase to be anonymous, it will be like in all kinds of science fiction movies that we saw in Blade Runner or whatever, that how to get out of the matrix so nobody knows about me if I carry this kind of thing and get this injection or whatever. So in the future, it will be the opposite of Andy Warhol, be famous. I think I did this model, I drew it one day and I played with it. And I think I see this movement, or there should be more of a movement from what we're used to for hundreds of years, and specifically in the economic conception of what is an economic race. It's the me going to be an entrepreneur, going to be a company, and the company will employ people, and I will make benefit for everybody, that I will pay payroll to them. But it's me, the one, the hero, the one, always the one. But lately, the 60s are back, and we can see a lot of talk about the we, the together, about containing the other, about allowing him to be, about acknowledging the fact that he has a right. You can see between the fight on nations, that being fighting for land. You can see it in my country, that I'm from the side that I'm empathizing the non-citizens that are fighting for a voice, the Palestinians, for example. But the old world, what I call the yesterday people, they say, no, let's separate, let's segregate. It's them and us. Only one is the winner. It's them. Put them in camps, put them in whatever. Separate, not together. Together is danger. It's too much hassle. No. There's a movement from me to we. You can see it in the sharing economy. You can see it in many, many kind of economical models that are being raised now, which are wonderful, which are taking account entities that we didn't take account, the thinking of stakeholders. So as human beings that we were in the me, we used to think of hierarchy and comparison. We used to compare all the time or think of our hierarchy, what stage you are in, what status you are. And in the new thinking, what will come, I see it will coming more and more, is the holarchic thing. Arthur Kessler, the scientist in the 60s, he brought this up, the holarchy and the holon. The holarchy is a whole, the holon is also a whole, but within another whole. It's not becoming into a particle. If you want it a very simplistic terms, it's like a fruit salad or vegetable salad. Each vegetable contains its identity, but together is the vegetable salad. Because the tomato doesn't become something else. It's not a melting pot. So it's a whole within a whole. I think holacracy, this management style that they did at Zappos and Medium, try to touch that. So we is the hero. The we movement is our hero of the future. I call these times the rewilding times because we are kind of waking up from our domesticated past, from people and companies and powers that used to, and stories and traditions and religion that try to domesticate us, to put us into a mold of behavior, which is benefit to someone, us as well, in a way. Not today, not sure. Nothing is sure. So I call it the rewilding times, the feral times. When you go into domestication, you've been domesticated. The opposite movement is called feral, feralizing, from domesticated into the wild. And when you go into the wild, you need different skills, you need new skills. And this is something that I deal with as well. What are the new skills? So welcome to the rewilding world. The domestication period is declining. We used to live in the wild society before we lived together. We used to be individuals, the chasing mammutas, like Neanderthals. Then we got together and we lived like this for thousands and thousands of years. Now, with the influx of technology and influx of all kinds of initiatives and situations and realities that are allowing us to embrace all kinds of behaviors that we couldn't before, and sometimes we have to. There are new behaviors and new changes that we have to adapt. There's a lot to adapt to today. We are moving in such a rapid pace, like never in history, in unprecedented times, that it's being a bit wild. It's kind of confronting everything we used to talk of. So we're moving, even organizations are moving from thinking of a company to thinking about society, thinking about stakeholders. The suppliers are important as the employees, the customers, the managers, they are all together. It's not just employees or just a product or just a sharing or just a board. It used to be board thinking or board member thinking or sharing or shares holders. Now it's stakeholders. That's an actual ad. We did it, my team, at the beginning of 2000 when we worked on First Direct, the first digital bank in England. People didn't like it, but the youngsters liked it a lot. And it was a very successful bank until today. So we're moving into inclusive capitalism. Inclusive capitalism includes other entities. And we see a lot of movements, usually or especially the millennials, which are just talking about enoughism, the enough of this culture. Just another product, another bloody water. We need to wake up, and there's new kind of waking up. We see it a lot, very interesting. So we need to all kinds of new tools to augment, to enrich our imagination so we can think of new futures and new things to learn, because the electric light didn't come from just improving candles, you know? I will move, I have for 4 minutes, so I will move a bit forward. I'll recommend you to see a movie called Tokyo. It shows the 3 different aspects of the future of society, and it talks about a phenomenon in Japan called ikokomori, even before the COVID, or people that got fed up of this reality and stuck at home. Home. What is home? What is the birthplace? Today, people are jumping from place to place, digital nomads. It's not where you, it's not anymore what's your birthplace, but it's where you come from, where you're coming from. That's it. Identity and countries is just pushing a button. No more belonging, no more Great British. Now I'm a different citizen. In Africa, the Black Africans are waking up. They're seeing the history being totally stolen, being brought. After hundreds of years, they are raising their heads in a way that they are using their own science fiction, this African science fiction. They are dreaming of a different history after being hijacked, after the history is being hijacked. This is a famous singer that opened a project. It's called the Future City of Africa. We have the new technology and innovation opens different sources in our brain and gives us more power to think and more abilities to think and more creativity. So the imagination economy is rising. We're going to places to dream. We need places to go and imagine, because the automation, other people will do the things that we don't have to think about. Our role as human beings is to imagine, is to be creative, is to find your own kind of creativity. We need imagination more than ever. We have 8 types of imagination. Don't think of it about imagination. There's even rational imagination and dreaming and strategic imagination and fantasy and effectuative and memory reconstruction and something that can be totally rational. There's all kinds of imagination. But this is what we are as human beings. This is our future. People are moving from experience to experiment new behaviors. What can be tomorrow? What can we, how can we live tomorrow? What will be the living of tomorrow? We don't know. We have to experiment in many, many ways. Don't forget that each one of us might have an imaginal cell. I don't know if you heard of a story about imaginal cell, but the cocoon from which the butterfly is being born is something very unique. The cocoon is eating itself totally eating itself until it's nothing. Only few cells are being saved. It's called the imaginal cell. And these little cells, they're starting new life. They're starting to create the butterfly that comes out of the chrysalis, after the cocoon. This little cell, 1 or 2 or 3 cell, is called imaginal cell. Cell that imagine and create a new life. So we are all imaginal cell, or they between us, they are imaginal cell. And we don't want to own anything. We don't want to outsource. We want to outsource everything. This is how millennials are thinking. This is how Gen Z thinking. People born in 2000. We can see companies that everything is living together. It's crazy. It's multicultural. People are not going to work anymore, to a workplace. They're going for places to work, because working is something with the mind, something with imagination. They need the right surrounding to it. This is a bank in USA, a real bank. This is I don't have time for it, but this is Lucy McRae. She's a wonderful scientist, and actually she's an artist that are dealing with the most intimate aspects of being a human being. What is a hug? What is being in a womb when we are 40 years old? How can we recreate that? This is something which we've done in Beirut Design Week as a present. It's like bringing a DNA, a good DNA, to a wedding as a present. This is an outside womb being developed in the lab. So the husband can take part in the baby getting born, and not just the woman has all the effort. It's part of equalizing the playing field and being more open. So it's a womb that you can carry in the park. Aggie Haynes did all kinds of experiments with the babies of tomorrow. How can they look? What do they need in the future of tomorrow? What kind of features do they need? Every CEO now has to think like a designer, has to think with imagination. He designs future models. He designs business models. He designs organization. He is a designer. He's not a CEO just in charge of the shares. Wanderlust. We're going to be nomads, all of us, not just the digital nomads. Everybody is nomads. Borders are going to be changed. So we in the next future, we're going to see new kind of gypsy living, new kind of immigrants. We're going to learn from these two girls created a book, wonderful book called Misfit Economy, when they learn from pirates and gangsters about innovation, what kind of innovation tools they are using. So we're moving from customer-minded to human-centered, to humanity-centered, and to interspecies-centered. Who knows what interspecies we will live together in the next few times. Again, science fiction is part of our work. Actually, Harry Popper is part of this conference. He has a wonderful company that uses sci-fi writers to do innovation for big companies. Here, Minority Report, I was talking about it. It's kind of a pit stop mode. Companies are in the flow, in the fast flow of life. Companies need to think like a pit stop in the Formula One. You get in, the customer or the human being is being fixed and shoot out to move and be benefited in the next stage of his life. How do you promote your customer to his next stage of life in the best way? There's all kinds of urban living systems that are being invented in IKEA, for example, by the studio of IKEA called Space 10. Everything is going to be nomad and on the move. So there's all kinds of moving vehicles that are going to satisfy our needs. They're talking about the future cities that will be like airports around an airport, because there's so many drones and so many flying vehicles that will serve us. So cities will be built around airplanes, because airplanes are using it. Terminals, the cities of the future, where we have a lot of drones and we have a lot of flying initiatives. The city of New York 100 years ago, city of New York today, city of New York in 100 years from now. Why not? Urban forestation. We need nature with us. We need to eat. We need to grow tomatoes, really good tomatoes. We can do it ourselves in the city. There's a whole movement, wonderful movement, which is moving into that, which is wonderful. So imagination and imagining what will be tomorrow, as you saw in some examples, it's a part of our identity. We are creating our identity now. This is why it's so important. So I was starting in schools. It's what we call future literacy. Actually, like we teach math, and you teach literature, and you teach art, you teach how to imagine futures. And we took these 8 to 11 children, and we did a wonderful festival with them to show the power of children, of imagination, how they see the future. And they engineered all kinds of solutions around water. And it was wonderful. I'm here, and I'm the biggest one, as you see. And these are my partners. It's called Design-a-thon. Every year it's being done in so many countries, and it's wonderful. So future literacy is going to be taught in schools. But let's not go into optimistic or, about being a utopia or being a dystopia. Let's not move between this. I'm talking about something in the middle. It's called protopian futures. Protopia is just a bit better than today. It's the continuous improvement. It's a state of becoming that we are into it. Let's stay there for now until things will be clear, until we move to another plateau, if we move to another plateau. Let's stay in protopia. Let's hope for protopian futures. Okay? Listen, people, always see goosebumps, look for the O, and that's it. Obrigado. Thank you for listening. I'm finished.
Nice. We is the holistic hero of the future. This is the reason we create Future Hacker, only to exclaim it here. And now, I'd like to know why Itai is the first keynote speaker. Thank you very much, Itai. To debate about so many disruptive ideas, Beatriz Fernandez will join with this conversation. Bia has a PhD from Cornell University, experience in helping private and public organizations understanding technology, digital culture, and emerging trends through research, education, and strategy. Welcome aboard, Beatriz.
And just a thing, I'm still working towards my PhD, but hopefully in a few years we will have it.
Right.
And, but yeah, so I also want to call in Francisco Santolo. So Francisco, do you want to introduce yourself?
Vai ter que colocar o Itai
Hello.
nessa discussão, tá?
Real pleasure to be here. I'm not sure if you're listening. Great then. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Francisco Santolo. I'm an economist, and then I've had a career as a corporate employee linked to marketing and planning, commercial planning. But then I became an entrepreneur 6 years ago. I found it scalable, and since then we've grown very quickly, and we've been helping entrepreneurs, business people, and big corporations all over the world to innovate, to create new companies, and transform the world, create disruption, and avoid it. So it's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, so we have this amazing table with all these great minds. I will connect a little bit with the content from Itai, because I think there's a lot of things we could discuss. But when we talk about this work that we do about imagine and constructing new futures, especially when we are thinking about bringing disruption or change, we are still, like Itai showed us, like immersed in traditions, in structures, in powers, in privilege that sometimes we even hold, right? So how do you think we can kind of like break these biases or unveil the own narratives that we are immersed in? What do you think about that?
Is the question for me?
I think both. We can
Okay.
start maybe with either.
Let's go, Itai.
Maybe Francisco can start. Oh no, sorry.
As you prefer. What I thought when you did the question was directly I linked it to fear. What I really perceive continuously when I face the challenge of helping people all over the world, even big executives or very successful entrepreneurs or people who are driving change in the world, is we all human beings are totally diverse. And this will bring this quantum anarchy in a way, because everyone will be more powerful and will take more decisions, and it's not a centralized decision making. Everyone is influencing the world, and every action is more and more important. But in a sense, the important thing is this idea of building together and this idea of knowing where this will go. So in a sense, what I feel is in this world where everyone is more powerful, what I see as a common thread within that diversity, it's a lot of fear and a lot of similarities between human beings. We're all acting in the end, no matter who we are, no matter where we are, depending on our fears, depending on our need of love, depending on our need of acceptance, depending on a lot of things. We're very dependent on how others look at us. We're very dependent on what's the right thing to do. We were trained in a world where there was right or wrong. And that concept is now disguised. It's not easy to understand what's right or wrong. No one will tell us. We were trained to obey, to work, to have a Taylorist approach to productivity. And we come now to a world from 1 minute to the other in a very quick pace, in which we need to take our own decisions. We need to be different than the rest and not equal as before. We need to decide how the future is gonna look like. And if we take this decision or we don't take it, we are even though choosing how the world will be. So in a sense, this idea of why it's not happening, it's because it's completely new to us. It's absolutely new to us. And by training entrepreneurs, I know that the tools I need to teach people to be able to have the self-knowledge and the knowledge of what's coming and start taking their own decisions and start deciding by themselves and are completely different than the ones we were taught to be successful in our careers, in our corporations, in our personal lives. So it's a huge challenge and we need to start to unlearn and learn everything again. Thanks.
Great answer. Itai, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit? Just don't forget to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's not fair. I don't like to mute myself. It's not my type. No, Francisco, you have so many rights in so many areas. I mean, well, I can say a few things. First of all, I think we should have a fear school, or fear should be part of every school since kindergarten, even before kindergarten. It's how do we, and maybe we should rebrand fear. Maybe we should, fear is such a phonetically wrong word. Maybe we should deconstruct fear and treat it again so we can all grow into the many facets of fear and see that fear can be a good thing as well. Fear is alert. Fear can raise our senses to a level of totally wonderful kind of action level. So fear is good if you use it well. But fear now is being branded very badly. So maybe we should reconstruct and deconstruct the word fear from early age. But who can do it? Families cannot do it themselves. Schools are not built to it. Extracurricular schools maybe, but it can be done. I don't know exactly now. It's, you know, you gave me maybe a different project now. Maybe it should be a global project, but it should be done because it's said to start this age. When you talk to entrepreneurs or even managers, CEOs, board members, chairmen, they are full of fears. They don't even hide it. They don't hide it in a way that they branded it for themselves. It's not fear. It's a conservative look at the economic market in order to make success so it will benefit all the shareholders, not you motherfuckers downstairs that are waiting for trickle down. No trickle down for you today. So, but what I mean is, without cynicism, or with cynicism, is the thing is that you're talking about, if we're talking about not living the people that are fearing today, and they are dealing in their daily life with this new normal, they cannot do it alone. They cannot sit with themselves in the balcony or with their wife or with whatever, or the wife with another friend or some kind of beloved ones and think about how do we adapt. They have to they have to be open to other units of society to think together. There should be more gathering. I think you cannot do it by yourself. It has to be some kind of form of gathering or some kind of experience. By the way, as we know, as we learn, a very important rule in embracing a new behavior is by experiencing a new behavior. You cannot do or act differently unless you experienced it yourself. You cannot understand just by knowing, just by reading, just by listening to someone. You have to experiment it yourself. You have to experience it yourself. then you will understand the new behavior. So how we have to create, we have to enable city places where people can experience what is to adapt and to respond to different kind of situations. It has to be municipality level, country level, NGO level, you know, not family level, not neighborhood level.
We should even maybe thinking about more this cultural level of change, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yes, it's interesting to see how we have this culture that privileges so much not being wrong, like you both said, or not seeing your own failures or your own weaknesses, because we all have, right? And especially when we are talking about our own biases, our own history, sometimes the first step is to recognize, right? When we talk to other people, have contact with other cultures and different people from different spaces, to look at this and to recognize that as a strength also, not as sometimes a weakness. I think it's something that's very important for us to think. But I want to shift a little bit to the topic about another interesting thing that you guys touched upon. And we talk about a lot about like this technological solutionism, or even like technological chauvinism, because sometimes we see a lot of cool examples of new tech coming in and services. I like there's this researcher called Meredith Broussard. She even talks about like, oh, this is the belief that technology is always the solution, right? We have this like mainstream belief. So I really would like to hear from you, like, given these very technological driven narratives and these words that we have, like all these investments pouring in these new companies, in these startups, a lot of exciting things. But at the same time, I would like to hear from, what do you believe is true innovation, let's say like true disruption, and what do you understand as agents of change? Maybe if I could frame like this my question. Francisco, if you want to start us off. You are muted also.
Yes, of course. I believe there's a huge disconnect between investments and real innovation. This can sound a little bit provocative, but in a sense, innovation is about making things happen. It's about changing things. It's about bringing new solutions to old problems. It's about solving things in a better way. And this idea that links technology and innovation is very favorable to the intermediaries that are trying to fund projects and make money like the founding source of success. In reality, projects get successful because consumers adopt them, not because they get rounds or raise rounds of money. And in this sense, we need to understand what innovation is. And innovation has the ideation part and has the invention part, which could have the technology there. But really, innovation is about making things happen. It's about using this invention part, but then putting it into the hands of the customers. Putting it into the hands of the customers implies a strategy, business model, channels, how to get there, how to sell, how to communicate, how to make the company successful, how to make the finances of the company work. There's a whole bunch of things you need to do to get there. So technical innovations throughout history, even the ones who had been the better ones, they not always succeeded. The technology that succeeds is the one that gets implemented, the one that becomes easier for the customers, the one that solves the things in a simpler way. So around the world, I've been working with business people and entrepreneurs, and usually the most successful ventures, not measured by the amount of rounds and money they raise, but measured by the real success, profitability, sales, customers that are with satisfaction with the products, whatever, are the most simple ones. And what I come to the conclusion is technology is just a leverage for solving a problem.
Yes.
we have different evolution for technology, and we have this curve of evolution of exponential technologies. It's fantastic. If you search online, you can search for the Gardner curve. The Gardner curve shows that you have always a peak of of inflated expectations, and then you have a valley of disillusion, and then just over time, these technologies start working. Every VC is investing on these technologies very early, even before the peak of inflated expectations. And these same VCs are trying to exit the companies before the valley of disillusion, which means the companies explode the moment they leave. They win the money, they escalate, they scale, and then they disappear, and the companies don't generate any value for society in majority of the cases. So there's a huge confusion on this topic because there's a huge interest behind it to confuse. Many people are winning money with this confusion, and a lot of money is being invested in the wrong way, not adding value to society. So just to summarize and to add a little last concept is, disruption is just when the technology is good enough, and this is way behind this is way later in the Gardner curve, to be able to produce something that can replace an incumbent's product that is leader in the market and take the incumbent out of the market with this new technology. For that to happen, there's a lot of work to be done. You can't start a company by going to the massive markets as we see do. You start with a niche, you build on the technology, you build on the network, you build on the process, and it takes time to be really disruptive and to be innovative in the way they suppose they want to do. What they're doing is like a Ponzi scheme in which they add money and money and money and money, and the ones who are purchasing every round are the same ones. It's like if I were investing in my capital and putting money and saying my valuation is higher because I invest more every time. No, I'm just adding capital. Adding capital to your own company is not good necessarily.
To very few people.
Yep. So that's my opinion.
What do you think, Itai?
Oh, I think I completely agree with Francisco, and as he saw in all the adventures that he took with entrepreneurs and companies, I can see it everywhere, because something that knocks in your face every morning. I think a good disruption, I don't like the word disruption actually, because there's not really disruptions, but innovation, if it doesn't benefit a bigger number of stakeholders, more group of stakeholders, or the more groups of stakeholders the innovation benefits, then for me it's a good innovation. If it progresses humanity, but you cannot say humanity or society. What is society? Society is a group of stakeholders around something. It can be a city, it can be a religion, it can be a company. It's the employees, it's the suppliers, it's the managers, it's the board people, it's the society around them, it's novice people or people that are being influenced by this innovation. If it's medical, for example, do you progress them? Do you benefit them? Do you bring them something that will make their life more equitable, valuable, better? Will you give them tools that they can themselves, as agency, as self, can progress themselves by themselves? Did you help them walk? Not just gave them a stick, not just gave them a carrot on a stick and walk them to a better place. Did you give them the power to walk to a better place? This is what innovation is to me, because it's all about humanity, and technology, in the favor of technology, is for me insanity. I mean, technology is a supporting element. That's it. That's it. That's it. There's nothing else. And the narrower the group of people that benefit from it, the worse innovation it is. Open, more. We're living in a planet. We vouch for everyone. If we don't understand the accountability of innovation, we shouldn't deal with it. Then there's something wrong. Then morality comes in.
Yeah, one thing that you talked about, Itai, that I think it's very important for us to point out is this idea of this, there is no society, right? Because sometimes we talk about in this totalizing terms, like encompassing, like there is this
Yeah,
one human, and we don't think about specific groups that have completely different needs,
yeah,
completely different viewpoints and problems, and sometimes even solutions, right?
yeah.
um and also, Francisco, about what you're talking about, how depending on the company and in the structure that we are in, the innovations themselves and how the investments are done, sometimes it's not the innovation is truly good, right? But it's because the market itself feeds into it, saying like, no, this is a good thing, this deserves more investments. But for whom, right? Sometimes the answer is just for the people themselves that are investing in creating that, instead of the groups that they are saying that they would be impacting or changing the lives. Itai.
When you're saying the market or society, what do you mean the market invest? It's a very syndicate, it's a very few people, very specific syndicate of people that invest. It's not the market or society in plural. It's not like a poetic word, you know. It's a very specific place, people in a very specific game. That's it. It's a
It's
game.
it's very funny because it's like this, but it's society which pays the price. Because these things finish in an IPO, and when these companies go bankrupt, they are in the pension funds of the regular people, as it happened in 2001, 2008, and in every crisis with a Ponzi scheme we've seen before. The thing here is liquidity is so high from one minute to the other because of coronavirus. United States prints $3 trillion, and every government continues doing the same thing, that with so much liquidity, venture capital is not even being funded by investors anymore. It's not anymore a marketplace. It's debt. They get zero rate debt, and then they play the game that they know how to do business and do Ponzi scheme with the rounds. It's unbelievable. No one is realizing this.
This
We've been
is why
saying
I
this
call
for
it
6, 7 years, and WeWork went down. Uber got saved because of the delivery thing for food because of coronavirus, but it didn't have any sense. And I can mention majority of the companies we are praising, they don't have any business sense. They are just being subsidized by money that doesn't sustain itself over time. Those companies can continue scaling forever or go bankrupt.
This is why I'm saying we should reclaim our future. This is why I call my presentation. We should reclaim, these people are dealing with our futures.
Yes, of course.
Pension fund is our futures. So we should reclaim our futures. I cannot say it in any clear way.
A minute before when you said scaling, I was talking about the rounds, no, not really scaling, because this figure of scaling is amazing. This figure of scaling is the KPI that the venture capitalists choose in each company, in each case, that you can manipulate with money. So when you show it grows, you tell investors they need to put money again. But in a sense, what is scaling? Let them define for you what is scaling, and they will say something different in each of their companies. There's nothing called scaling. Why would you want to scale a failure? Why would you want to scale a losing company, a losing money company? Doesn't make any sense.
It's interesting because you talked about the clients that you dealt and the people that you deal. And one thing that I always ask my clients, or I try to talk to them, like to ask themselves, that it's for whom, for really, because this realization of understanding and sometimes even admitting to yourself, like, okay, I am part of something that's not gonna truly benefit the people that I am saying that I'm gonna benefit. And if if we are thinking about this long-term thinking that we are talking about, Itai talked about a little bit about education, Francisco about how it takes time. So I think maybe as our last thought, I would like us to think a little bit. What would you tell, for example, for the next generations of emerging people thinking about the future. Or so for these youngsters that are coming in, I know that, like we said, there are different perspectives for different groups and different problems. But if you had to have a take on what would you say to the next generations that they would need to pay attention to and maybe works towards?
In a sense, this is what I do for life, for living. I decided to make it my purpose. And what I try to bring the future generations and also everyone who's living, who's alive right now, is the first thing is linked to, the future is linked to relationships. The future is linked to genuine relationships, to community. It will be horizontal, not hierarchical, not vertical. Whatever you do every day with other people, if you give first, if you support, if you offer yourself and your talent and your resources to collaborate, you're winning the future in a sense. That's what the future looks like, and you need to start building your networks in a healthy way, but not with a transactional approach, but a really relating approach, and that's one thing. The other thing is learning is the key for the future. It's about continuous learning, and it's about knowing that there's no truth, and no one has the truth, and no one can tell you your value. No one can tell you what will work. It's all about experimentation, like Itai was saying. So it's about continuously learning, knowing how to unlearn, keeping those semi-truths in the air till you change them, and trying to build powerful narratives and powerful truths. We, as human beings, we act and suffer and feel and live. Our experience depends completely on the stories and the narratives we build as a community and we build by ourselves. We are tortured by the stories we tell ourselves about the world, about us. We put ourselves as victims, and we need to be protagonists. There's a book called The Obstacle is the Way, linked to Stoicism, and it's like that. Whatever happens in life, the external things are the greatest opportunity ever to learn and become better, to be flexible. We need to be flexible for the future. We need to be able to transform ourselves and adapt and help each other. We can't do anything alone anymore. So I think it's this continuous learning, this learning from everyone, this relating with people, building things together, thinking and joining as a community and joining communities. And also another thing is, it's a world of abundance. And it's important what we do, because everything we do multiplies itself. We're more powerful than ever before. If we smile, we're generating a butterfly effect. If we swear, we're doing the same thing. And if we hurt someone, that comes back. And if we help someone, it comes back multiplied. So that's what we practice at Scale. We're 1,500 entrepreneurs and business people all over the world, and we collaborate horizontally, and it's impressive what we achieve. We achieve everything in a very simple way compared to the scale you had to go through before, getting a new position every 2-3 years, struggling to get to your money, then getting something with money as an intermediary thing. You need to go directly to your purpose. Don't lose time building for the future in how they tell you to do. Go out of the system, hack the system in a nice way. Take care of the rest of the people, but build your own path. That's what I would like to share. And don't be afraid. The only way of not being afraid is daring and doing things and failing and bumping yourself into things and suffering a little bit. Suffering is not accepting. When you suffer, you're trying to manipulate life. Life behaves as it behaves. You just need to get the obstacle, adapt, and be the best version of yourself. You can't change what life brings to you. You can influence it. And the best way is to try new things, accept, but never let yourself be there lying down, crying or whatever. Something that Itai said that is fantastic is our emotions are useful. Our emotions are signals. They're giving us valuable information. They're not there for me to cry and try to see if that helps somehow. It doesn't help. I'm not reading my emotion. And every emotion is super important.
How can I continue such a wonderful speech, Francisco. No,
You're
seriously.
amazing. I'm inspired by you. You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother. Really, you said so many wonderful stuff. I will add to it that I really believe in imagination. I really believe in this free power, one of the only free powers that we all have. It should start. It should not stop, because every child, every baby imagine, and we should not stop ever. And we should, again, deal with it as an asset, as a not a commodity, but as a value thing that should be nurtured completely, and do it together. As you said, the idea of society, the idea of the greater society. I really believe in imagination can empower fear. I think imagination and fear can live together. I think fear should be learned. Again, I'm saying things that I said before, but fear should be dealt in every possible way. I see the rise of the coaching platform, and in the beginning I was a bit skeptic about it, but I think in this area everybody needs that. Everybody needs to talk to someone, and I like this kind of coaching and therapy online groups that get together, and you can, for a fraction of price, you can get somebody to talk to you and relax your fear. But I'm looking for the next kind of progress which will actually deal with fear. And at the minute I cannot even imagine it, but if we can build some kind of machine that deals with fear and helps us go through it, like in the army I was being taught to deal with my fear and turn it into a positive, well, positive is definitely not the right word, but into actionable power, and to take away what stops me and what can cause me to, because of the fear, to create damage, maybe, because when people feel they might create damage. So studying fear and studying love and studying imagination, sorry?
I'm thinking out loud because this idea of fear, everything transcendental or anything that is fundamental that we do in our lives has to do with everything you're talking about. It has to do with being able to let fear aside and do what you're doing. Fear is linked to desire. Fear is linked to the thing we have, the more inner thing we have. I think the best thing we have as human beings to differentiate ourselves from machines is fear.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not good if you're going to a war to face machines, but it's a wonderful thing in the human experience.
Yes.
When you go through fear and learn, I think it's the best mechanism we have to be able to learn. Because in the end, life doesn't allow us to, life will continue torturing us with the same situations once and again till we learn. And in the meantime, we will have fear and we will suffer if we don't face it.
And I think fear can be dealt with wonderfully by living in or experimenting all kinds of groups of people, all kinds of entangling, all kinds of people, a variety of people, understanding and accepting that the other thing next to fear is what we call empathy. Empathy is containing the other one, containing his right to be an agency, to be someone, containing his right, or allowing, from my side, the right for him to be him. So by that, I can confront my fear with his fear, and together we can create a wonderful, wonderful collision between fears that can turn into a wonderful empathy, that can turn into a wonderful experiment. And this wonderful experiment can turn into wonderful innovation, or even a new society, or another new form of living, based a new, I always say something, a new awakened living. What I call I know awaken is a cliche word, but what I mean by awaken is not taking ayahuasca or taking a psilocybin or some kind of a mushroom or a drug. You can do that, and it's wonderful by its own. But what I mean is we need to walk towards the future. In philosophy, we say that we are being thrown into the future and our face backwards. We only judge the future by the past. And experimenting and meeting other people and empathizing other people is watching forward, is looking into the future, facing it. And facing the future is very frightening. So this is everything is all about. It's about that. It's about the scale between fear, empathy, imagination, experimentation, prototyping, creating a new form of living, going together, togetherness, wholeness, holiness, wholesome, and allowing the other one to be a whole in my whole, in our whole. If we are a neighborhood and we are a whole, what we call a society, some kind of a whole within another whole, then a new guy comes, he is another whole. So
Itai,
yeah.
I think your phrase reminds me a phrase by Web du Bois that talks like, oh, I insist that the objective of all true education is not to make people carpenters, it's to make carpenters people, right?
Yes.
So I think we need to think about this and to create, like, not to make this liberatory and radical education. Thank you so much, guys. Our time is over. So it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Let's humanize the world.
Yes, you know, Itai was saying that the future, facing the future, is frightening. But linked to what we were saying before, that where I am is where fear lives. I mean, I'm trapped in fear, and I believe that if I do something, something will go wrong. The thing is, if I don't do something, something is going wrong, and I'm having that fear, and I'm feeling bad. So let's humanize the future. I agree. It's an age to age. Taking Itai's words, word that's coming.
We need the fear fighters unit.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank
you too. Thank you
so much, Itai, Bia, and Francisco, for such an incredibly rich content. I think there is a lot for us to think about. So let's all embrace our emotions, reorganize the world, and move on.